Welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast, the show that helps you up your confidence game so you stop settling for less than you deserve. I'm your host, Brooke Collins, speaker, life coach, women's empowerment enthusiast, and the best friend you never knew you needed. Are you ready? Let's get started. Annabel Stewart, welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that we were able to connect with you all the way over across the other end of the world, really, from me. It's so awesome, though, because you are an alcohol reset coach, right?
Yes, that's right.
So you also say for women who adventure. So just why don't you, I think it's so interesting what you do. Why don't you describe it for us? What is an alcohol reset coach?
Sure. So I help women who want to change their relationship with alcohol, and I specifically focus on women who like being adventurous. I think changing our relationship with alcohol is one great big adventure, and it's often not seen in that way. It's seen as something that's scary and challenging, and it is challenging, but it is a great adventure. And my life changed radically when I took those steps.
How did you discover that you were a gray area drinker then?
So I was drinking, I was just a fun time person in my 20s and 30s. There was drinking everywhere. It was a real cultural thing. Everybody drank, and it was just the way that you had fun. And I did a lot of things like I was in industries like sailing and super yachts, where drinking is just really part of the whole scene. There's an awful lot of drinking. I think there's quite a bit of drugs as well, but I never got into that myself, but there's definitely a lot of drinking. Yeah, I'm so glad. Oh my goodness. So I just drank more and more. And then when I met my husband, who's Australian, I'm English, and we settled down in Australia, and we started a family. I became a mum. I found my drinking didn't slow down as I expected. I thought that I would naturally, as I stopped partying, I'd start drinking less, and it just didn't happen. And I found that I was feeling, I don't know, disconnected, and I just found that I was looking forward to wine o'clock every single night, and I didn't seem to be able to just have one, like most of my friends, one drink. I wanted another one, then another one, then another one. And it was really frustrating. I've done lots of things in my life. I've achieved heaps of things, but I couldn't seem to stop drinking when I wanted to. And that's when I knew I had to take action.
So that's interesting because I like that you put in your verbiage, like ditch the drink and get their fun back, right? Women can ditch the drink and get their fun back. Now, this concept is so awesome to me because I'm a recovering alcoholic. I literally just got my 9-year token last week.
Whoa, congratulations.
Thank you. And I did it the traditional 12-step way, but there was not anything like this when I was getting sober, although I was you're just like I'm over consuming, like I was falling down sick, getting shakes and stuff. But I still think I'd have tried it long before I would have gone into the 12-step program, because it just, to me, you describe getting sober in such a way that it sounds fun.
Yes, and it is. It really is fun. And that's what took me most by surprise. For years, I dreaded it. I didn't think I was an alcoholic because I wasn't physically addicted. I knew I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't drinking in the mornings. If I didn't drink, I wouldn't get the shakes. And I decided that was, how you distinguish between a drinker and a grey area drinker. So I knew I was psychologically addicted, but rather than physically addicted. And you've got to be careful with drinking, because if you are physically addicted, there's serious medical consequences if you're physically addicted. So I appeal very much to the grey area drinkers who are psychologically addicted. And I was dreading getting sober because I thought drinking was the only way you could have fun. I seriously thought if you stopped drinking, you wouldn't have fun anymore. And that's just so culturally what we're told all the time. Even the word getting sober means dull and boring and all that kind of stuff. And I bought into all that. Same as you. I stopped drinking 5 years ago, before it really kind of exploded into popularity, the whole alcohol-free movement like it has now. And there wasn't the dialogue around it. So it just sounded like you were really boring. It sounded like you were just dull if you didn't drink. So I was dreading stopping drinking. And I think, that was kind of playing at the back of my mind. That was almost holding me back, that I thought if I stopped drinking, life would stop being fun. And I identified as a fun person and a bit of a rebel and someone who did, fun things and was fun to be with. I couldn't see how I would be if I wasn't a drinker. So I was so surprised when I did stop drinking. And I found my life actually got better and more interesting, and I could do more when I stopped drinking. And that still astonishes me that that's the case. We're told that drinking does one thing, but it's the opposite. Drinking actually makes your life really small. And when you're drinking too much, really small, really dark, really grey and claustrophobic. And then when you stop, it just opens up into this, you know, this fabulous freedom that we find. And I don't think people realize that. I don't think people realize that it's so true. That old line about sobriety delivers what alcohol promises. That's true.
Yeah.
You know, we think we get something from drinking. We don't. We get it from not drinking.
Yeah. I think that is one of the best quotes I've ever heard. Sobriety gives you what alcohol promises.
Yeah.
I'm literally writing that down. Because that is one of the most, I found that to be true just in my own sobriety journey. Like when I thought that it wasn't going to be fun and my life was going to be so boring and I was going to have nobody to do anything with. And what am I going to do? Like go to the older person's community center and like hang out with them. And but when I did finally like start feeling better, it was amazing to me how much more vibrant my life was and how quickly it felt that way to me. So
Yeah.
when you gave up, when you decided to chuck the alcohol, did you struggle at all as a gray area drinker? Because I'm concerned, like, I mean, just confused how that, if it's like, you know, where I was like, I'm like white knuckling, not wanting to drink, you know, when I first quit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I tried over and over again. I had so many day ones because there's a ton of stuff online now, which is brilliant, and I love the fact that, you know, it's opening up. But even 5 years ago, there just wasn't this kind of, you know, it wasn't talked about this much. There was AA and rehab, and that was pretty much it. So I bought loads of books from Book Depository and downloaded stuff onto my Kindle and joined paid forums, and, you know, it was all, there wasn't the kind of, I don't know, it just wasn't on Facebook. There wasn't the social media that there is now. There wasn't
Right.
a choice of groups. So it was harder, and I did lots of day ones, but there are certain facets that make it a lot easier. So when I help people now, there's just certain things that if you can nail these certain areas, it really makes it a lot easier, because I know, because I've done it and I've been there and I've found the most straightforward way of doing it. So it's not particularly difficult, but it isn't always easy, if that makes sense. So it's actually, you just have to stop drinking, you know, you just have to stop putting the stuff in your mouth. That's pretty straightforward. But the biggest thing for me is the beliefs that we have underneath, and understanding how our brains work. That's what really clinched it for me, because we buy into all these beliefs and they are there operating you know, subliminally all the time for us. Right. And if we think we're missing out by not drinking, then it's really hard to stop drinking. That's what I had. So examining our beliefs is a big one, but also understanding how our brains work around alcohol, and our survival system and our limbic system, and knowing how they work. And it's so straightforward when you understand that, you know, this, I'll just talk about it quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Cool, that we have this this survival system, this limbic system, and it's the most ancient part of our brain, and it's only got 3 functions, and they are to avoid pain and to move towards pleasure, and to do both those things as easily as possible. So that's all it's ever trying to do, and that part of our brain overrides everything else. It overrides our prefrontal cortex, where we do our rational decision making and deciding, I'm not going to drink tonight, all these good choices that we make. When we feel perceived pain, and that can be like a stressful day, or the baby won't stop crying, or your boss yells at you at work, or someone's mean to you on Facebook, all those things, our ancient reptilian brains see that as pain, and they want to move us away from that pain and towards pleasure. And if we've been drinking regularly, a really quick, easy way of doing that, our brains know, is to have a drink, to turn to alcohol. Right. So it's fulfilling all those 3 functions. And you need to learn how to hack that, to override that, because you can't stop it. You have to work out a way to make it work for you instead, because it's a survival instinct. It's like breathing or your heart beating. It's just going to happen whether you like it or not. So you have to make it work for you, not against you. And so it's linked to when there was a saber-toothed tiger chasing us. Mm-hmm. It had to keep us safe. It had to move us away from that pain. Or if you put your hand in the campfire and it hurt, your brain would say, take that out. and make it feel better. And that's what we're self-soothing all the time with our drinking. And as women, and I know you and I have talked about this before, we have so many messages about having to be the best mum and the best friend and the best daughter and the best partner, all these things, all these roles that we have to fulfill. And I personally believe it's not so much as having it all as we're doing it all. You know, we kind of have somehow been suckered into doing it all. And we often drink because we're just trying to do so much, and that's our one little thing that we do for ourselves. So we've just kind of been hijacked there. We drink to make ourselves feel better, because a lot of us are empaths and highly sensitive people, and we're intuitive, and there's so much noise around us that we just drink because it's a quick way of turning down that noise and making ourselves feel better. And we need to work out other ways of doing it. So I think that's a big part of it.
Without a doubt. It's actually like, because I look at it habitually, like when you create this habit. So a lot of people, I think, are dependent on alcohol, not addicted, maybe in going into the gray area, but it's the same for me. I even look at it now, like if I in the summer have a scoop of ice cream, I think I told you this last time, but being in recovery, like sugar does the same thing to my brain that alcohol did. So the minute that I have ice cream, and my husband is the same, and he's been sober pretty much since he was like 17, the next night we're both like, oh, did you get ice cream? Did you get ice cream? And it's like that quick for both of us, you know, like it's like this, we need it, and it becomes this habit. If we cave the second night, forget it. It's like 10 days for us to stop with the ice cream. And it never ceases to amaze me how quickly our brain, that pleasure center, like when it moves in and it's like, oh, we haven't had this in a while. Like what's going on? The dopamine hit and like all this stuff. But I mean, really, we are fed as a society around the world globally, not just, you know, and each country also has its own stuff that it feeds people too. But we are fed like, oh, have a drink and relax. Look at the wine ads. Like those are like so sexy and sleek. And if you see in a movie, like the wine bottles and the glasses are all so pretty and the light kind of like vibrates off of them. We're like conditioned to be like, oh, I just need a glass of wine. I just take the load off.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's totally it. And we don't look at the reality, which is often, I don't know if you get Ab Fab, Absolutely Fabulous, but there's this great character. Have you seen that?
Yes.
And so there's Patsy, and she's got, you know, she's looking fabulous with champagne and a cigarette at the start of the evening. And then at the end, she's got mascara all over her face, her hair's everywhere. And that's the reality. We see the kind of like the sophisticated side. But I know I made some really shocking choices when I was drinking too much, and I would eat badly. I'd get involved with the wrong blokes. I put myself at risk. I've done some really stupid stuff. I've ended up, you know, making an absolute idiot of myself. There's so many things that we don't look at when we think about drinking being fun. We don't look at all the horrible things that happen, and that's not even looking at all the health aspects of, you know, every single drink we have is, you know, doing us harm basically, and how it affects families and societies with domestic violence or domestic cowardice. You know, there's some horrendous stats, and we don't go into the whole fear factor because that doesn't help, but it's not this, you know, wonderful liquid magic thing that we all think it is. But we all seem to sort of buy into that belief. I do think things are changing, but I think it's happening really, really slowly. I think I personally get really cranky with big alcohol doing all this disingenuous stuff, like you say, about making it look glamorous. And they keep pushing this tagline in Australia anyway about personal responsibility, drink responsibly, as if they didn't know that it's an addictive substance. It's addictive, and they're pretending they don't know that. They're pretending that people have a choice. And I firmly believe that if you're drinking regularly, you will be somewhere on the spectrum of addiction. If you're drinking regularly, you're somewhere on there, because that's how addictive substances work. But they're pretending, it doesn't exist. And I think in a few years' time, it'll be like big tobacco was. You know,
I would hope that because it's a legal drug. People they won't refuse to see it that way, but that's what it is. It's just as addictive as like the smoking and the heroin. Like it is so hard to kick, and it is one of the only substances that you can die from in withdrawal. So
Yes.
there's a lot of drugs out there. There's a lot of things that can hook you, but there's only a couple that actually will kill you withdrawing from, and alcohol is one of them.
Right. And isn't that terrifying? I didn't even know that until I started looking into stopping drinking. I didn't realize it was so bad. And it's also the only drug we have to justify not taking.
Right.
Why? Like, we don't have to justify not smoking or not injecting heroin or anything like that. But if you don't drink, people will say, "Are you okay? Why aren't you drinking?"
I
You
know.
get quizzed about it, which is just nuts. So I really feel for people that are trying to move away from drinking, or drink less, or be sober curious, or just experiment with it. And yeah, and they haven't got that support around them. So I love the fact that we're having this conversation now, and it's happening more and more. Women are exploring those options more. I thought we had to drink, and we really don't.
Well, so explain to me what sober curious and the type of women who come to work with you, because I think that there's probably, so many of them even listening to the show, that are just, I've wanted to quit drinking 3 glasses of wine or 2 glasses of wine or two, martinis or whatever it is every night. And I want to start going to the gym and waking up refreshed, but I just can't stop. So when you talk about sober curious, is that a way to make it sound more alluring? Like, you can just be curious about what being sober
Yeah,
is.
totally. And why not? I think if it makes it less scary, then it's got to be a good thing, right? So
Right. Yeah.
when we talk about, I didn't want to be an alcoholic, when I was looking into it, I kept Googling it thinking, alcoholics, like, surely that's like old men in the gutter with paper bags, isn't it? That's not me. Like, I don't, wake up and drink. I didn't, or it's Sandra Bullock falling into a wedding cake. It's really hardcore drinking people. I knew it didn't fit me. And I think Hollywood's got a lot to answer for, that we have these kind of caricatures of
Yeah.
alcoholics. And I love the idea of the sober curious. And when I found out about grey area drinkers as well, I was like, oh, that's me, that's who I am. So someone who's not physically addicted, who isn't necessarily an alcoholic, but is somewhere on that, that spectrum of being addicted. And let's face it, there's a lot of us that are on that spectrum.
Right.
So a lot of people, when they want to stop drinking, they avoid it because it's so damn scary. Because it's, drinking feels like your friend sometimes, especially drinking alcohol is just awful. It makes your life shrink. So it just gets smaller and smaller, and you don't even realize until it's just you and the alcohol. And I was doing things like, I didn't want to go out and see friends. We wouldn't accept maybe dinner invitations to see friends, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to sit on the sofa and drink, basically. I'd have to stay sober and drive home. I was doing less things that I like doing, like going out hiking or going camping, or anything that meant I had to get up early. I was avoiding doing, because I knew I'd find it hard when I was drinking. So drinking actually makes our lives smaller, and we kind of deny that to ourselves quite often. We don't want to look at that because it's scary. And I think that when we label things as giving things up forever, it sounds terrifying. It sounds like you're having something fun taken away from you. But if you're just dabbling, if you're just dipping your toe in the water, if you're sober curious and just having a look around at the whole alcohol-free lifestyle, then it's not that hard. Nothing's being taken away from you. You're choosing to not drink for a certain period, whether that's 5 days or 21 days or whatever it is. And then you can see how that works for you. And that, of course, it makes it easier and less scary. And I think that's got to be a good thing. So I totally put my hand up and admit that, yeah, sober curious is, I think it's a fabulous way of getting more people to look at it as an option.
Well, and I love it because I think it also draws light, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because, I do have a pretty old school way, the, typical model of getting sober, although I love all the new stuff that's happening. But I would think that somebody who is sober curious, whose world is getting smaller and smaller, and the alcohol is taking over sort of all of the things because they're doing everything around the drinking. When
Yeah.
they are sober curious, and when they do, let's say they contact you, they pick 5 days or they pick 10 days, I would think that it would become very obvious to that individual if they were a gray area drinker, or if, like, oh shit, I have a problem. Like, I can't even make a day,
Yeah.
like, so I think that when you do something like that, with the beautiful thing about it is as a person, like they say all the time, like if you can't go with one drink and that's it, like you've got to look at that. And if you can't go a week or 2 weeks without thinking about it, you've got to look at that. um
Yeah, I
I just
agree.
I feel like a lot of women would the option to be able to look kind of privately with you without having to go somewhere and admit to something that maybe isn't the problem, like a gray area drinker versus full-blown alcoholism. I mean, there is a difference. And I just think it's so great because I think it really helps you decipher, okay, wait, I really need to look at this now, because I'm really struggling here in 24 hours. I'm like really needing a drink. Or a gray area drinker, like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to
Can do
work out.
it.
I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go,
Yes.
maybe I'm going to go to sleep, whatever. And then the next day they wake up and they're like moving on. And, I think it's a really good way, the sober curious, like find out, and then also find out how good it feels when you do it multiple days in a row.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's so true that it does like you say, it kind of weeds out which way you need to go in the future. And a lot of people kind of self-select as well. So people know if they can go a day without drinking. If they get physical symptoms, then there's different options for them rather than they're not grey area drinkers and that isn't the right route for them. I think as well you need to recognise, or we need to recognise, that grey area drinkers, it's not always easy. Like sometimes you get day one and then day two, and then something will happen on day three and you'll stumble and you'll go, oh, sod it, and have a drink.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're an alcoholic either. It just means you're learning. And I love the analogy of thinking about being alcohol free as it's like rehearsing for a play. Like you're up there on your own and you rehearse. You have a little while where you're going through it and you're trying it and you're getting further each time. And there's people that can help you and direct you and give you advice, but you've still got to you've got to do it. You've got to do the work on your own. You've got to get up there. But just because you slip and stumble doesn't mean that you have to give up. And that's something that I'm sure you found as well. A lot of drinkers, a lot of female drinkers especially, have this tendency to to perfectionism, and we use it as a stick to beat ourselves up. So if things aren't perfect, we just find it so hard to deal with. If we can't do something perfectly, then that's it. We chuck it all out the window and we're just hopeless, and we beat ourselves up. And the irony of that is that when we and I know because I did this, when we self-flagellate, when we're like, gosh, you're so stupid, you're so useless, you can't do this, what's wrong with you? When we talk like that to ourselves, we're causing ourselves pain and stress. So that limbic part of our brain again says, oh, this really hurts.
Yeah.
I know what will make you feel better. Go and have a drink. And it just goes around in this awful self-fulfilling loop that we're beating ourselves up. So we're feeling bad, so we have a drink. So we feel awful, so we beat ourselves up and feel bad and have a drink. And it just goes round and round. And I know because, that was me. So I think it's really important to distinguish between the grey area drinkers and the alcoholics.
Yeah.
But also, just because you're a grey area drinker doesn't mean you're going to, stop in one day and go skipping off into the sunset. There's work to be done and heaps to learn. Yeah. And it's a process, but just having that space, being seen and being amongst other women who are going through it and, getting highs and lows and the good bits and the bad bits and working it out. That's so empowering. I think as women, we're not islands and we're often sort of isolated, and connecting with more women going through the same thing is just so empowering. It's so fabulous for us.
I love the we of anything, the power of we. I think that it is absolutely one of the most powerful ways to, if you're looking for improvement or healing, or just to be heard, being among other women who are going through the same thing that you are, and like being able to talk to them and be like, God, I'm not an island. I'm not alone. Like there are other women out there who
Yes.
feel this way. And, gray area drinking, I recognize it's hard. I mean, I think it's hard to give anything up in today's society when it's shoved down your throat in every reality TV show and movie and shows you're got people binge drinking and doing all this stuff. It's hard to get away from it. And I actually have a really big fear for the young 20s because they're drinking. I binge drank in college of course, but like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And these kids today, it seems ramped up even from when I was in school. You know, I know it was 20 years ago, but like, I just think there's like this continuous, but please be responsible, get a date, get a designated driver and be responsible. So I think that there is some responsibility on the government or the companies to quit saying that, because
Yes.
you
Yeah.
aren't giving people a choice. I like that you said that. And I
Yeah.
also like gray area drinking, that, if you stumble, get back up, because I believe in everything I do that it's progress, not perfection. So if you have a bad day and you slide backwards, like, great, you're still 2 steps ahead of where you were 2 weeks ago or a week ago,
Yes,
right?
that's so true. But it's so hard to tell ourselves that. We think, oh, I'm just no good. I can't do it. And you look at everybody ahead of you and you think they've done it and I haven't. It's easy to say, but it's like we say, having support around you when you're doing that makes it a lot easier to actually accept. And that's such a shame about, people drinking more. I kind of hope that it's going the other way, or that we're being more aware. I know in Australia, lockdown has been shocking. The statistics are out for the last year, and we drank more last year than, we're drinking at Christmas month levels the whole year. It's
Same here.
terrifying. Right. Yeah. It's so upsetting because I think for women as well, connection is such a big part of our lives, feeling connected. And when we're isolated, when we're sitting at home on our own, or when we're, for mums, I think for me, that was a big reason why I was drinking. I just felt very alone. Even though I had people around me, you just need to feel connected to other people, and lockdown certainly doesn't help with that. So the fact that we've now got these online spaces where we can connect and we can feel supported, I think in some ways makes us really, we're really lucky that this is happening when it's happening, because we have got this technology to help us to find
Yeah.
other people in the same boat.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that there's nothing worse in the world than being amongst people and feeling utter loneliness, and having people around you. It's like, yeah, you can be lonely by yourself. Like, I get that after so long, but when you're in a room with people and you feel alone and like nobody understands you, and then you start the shaming. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be like these people? They're not struggling with, you know, downing a bottle of wine a night. Like, they're not feeling badly about doing it. So why should I feel badly about doing it? And I think
Yeah.
it's just the loneliness factor for women is it's a it's a big deal. It's a big trigger for a lot of women, that lonely island feeling.
Yes, yeah, totally. I think we talk about in our course about there's various different factors that we're often missing when we're drinking too much as grey area drinkers, and it's things like connection, moving our bodies, all these things that release serotonin because we're trying to replace the dopamine that we used to get from the drinking. So yeah, connection and moving our bodies, getting outside, nature bathing is so important to us as humans, and it's really easy to forget, but we need a dose of nature, and science has proved that now. And they even know how much you need. You need 120 minutes a week. And it doesn't matter if you get it incrementally or if you just go out at the weekend for 2 hours and, get some woods and some sunshine. You actually need, we're wired to need
120
nature.
minutes a week.
120 minutes. Yep, you can look it up. That's what they found now. And it gives you a massive boost, a massive serotonin boost. We need to be creative, and that looks different for all kinds of people, and we need to remove the fear around being creative. So you can be creative in a rubbish kind of way or an experimental way, it doesn't really matter. We need to look at our boundaries as well, and look at because connecting is important with other people, connecting with ourselves, and making sure that we don't carry around big bags of resentment. And that's another reason why a lot of us drink, because we don't have our boundaries in place. So we feel people are taking advantage, and sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But if we communicate where we stop and other people start, and what's our responsibility and what's theirs, then that's another reason why people drink, because of that resentment. So if you can remove that, then that's another reason. That's another way of making it easy for yourself to move forward. So we've got all these kind of things that we can use to boost our serotonin, to make ourselves feel better. And when we look at those, we're so often neglecting them. And drinking is the only little thing that's, I say pleasurable, but it's like, it's not even pleasurable quite often. It's the only thing we have for ourselves in our lives. We need to make sure that we have other stuff in our lives that makes us feel good. Because the shocking thing about drinking as well is, as you know, Brooke, it affects your neurotransmitters and actually physically affects your brain.
Yeah.
So because you're constantly artificially stimulating your pleasure receptors, so your brain, when you have a drink and it releases all these pleasurable chemicals, your brain knows it's not right, so it dampens down your pleasure receptors. And after a while, it just does that automatically. So you just feel rubbish and you feel depressed all the time, and you need a drink to get up to the level of normal that non-drinkers are at. So that your brain will rebuild itself, physically rebuild itself when you stop drinking, but for a while you just feel flat and grey and horrible until you have a drink. But it's the drinking making you feel flat and grey and horrible. So there's so many things around why we drink that if we look at, we can actually unpick all those things and work out how to rebuild, restructure our lives so that we don't need the alcohol anymore. So it's talking about things like that with other women that can really empower us to take steps out of this awful trap, this awful cycle that we get into.
I love that. Is this what so you have one-on-one clients and you have a group? You have the wine o'clock reset. Is that a group or is that?
No, that's just a freebie for people who want to get started on their journey and are so curious. So yeah, that's just to help people get started. So I talk to people one-on-one, but we also have a 21-day online package. And it's an online course with little bite-sized videos that people watch each day, and they chat in the group, and we have weekly catch-ups. And we love doing that course. It's on Kajabi as well, so there's an app, so people actually take it with them on the go. It's very easy to use on your phone. So yeah, there's different ways of doing it, and I think that the main thing is just to start investigating. There's lots of different options online, and I think mine's brilliant, obviously, but for people to start, if they're interested, start looking at what's out there. And there's so many different there's so much information out there to get you started and to work out what's for you. There is also the AA. There's a lot of online AA stuff as well, which I think is something that you went down that route, the AA route, and you can get a lot of that support online as well now. So yeah, there's heaps of options if people want to get started.
Well, and I just love the thing that you do, like what you do in your course and everything, because I think it is so it's innovative. I mean, there's no other way for me to describe it. It's innovative. It's something that until we met, I really had never heard of. I mean, I had heard of sobriety coaching and like all of that kind of stuff, but not any of the stuff you're doing, which is such a huge demographic of people, of women who are struggling daily. And that is where I'm like, yes, this is so awesome. Somebody to come in and help all these people who are really living in a gray, fuzzy, sad, like Mr. Blue, the cartoon area. And I mean, how tragic is that? Just because you aren't able to like help reset yourself, and to be able to come to someone like you and meet other women who are going through the same thing. I mean, that's powerful. That's change.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it is. I think it breaks my heart. There's so many people, and I used to be one of them, that was just so ashamed and hiding, like you say, because they just thought it was them. They thought they were broken, and they didn't know that that it's a really super common thing. If you're drinking regularly, you'll be somewhere on the addiction spectrum, and that goes for an awful lot of people. So they think in Australia it's 1 in 5 women have a relationship with alcohol that they would like to change. And hey, that's a lot, that's a lot of women out there. So I love the fact that we're talking about it, and I love the expression, a rising tide lifts all ships, because the more we talk about it and the more women get free, the more we can help each other. And I think that's a big part of the sobriety, the soberverse, is women helping other women, and doing what you can to lift other people up and lift them out of that shame hole that we get into. And I just see it so many times. Women, strong, confident women who've achieved so much just get stuck, and there's just this one little thing that they can't seem to get a handle on, and it affects their whole lives. And for some people there's trauma that's informing their current choices. And sometimes that needs to be addressed separately, and that is sometimes adverse childhood experiences, trauma in your background, that can impact your decisions to drink. But that's something you can deal with separately. You can get separate help from that, and that's completely separate from addiction. And
Right.
trauma also, it doesn't have to mean that there was something terrible happened to you when you're a child. Trauma can just be something that happened to you that you didn't have the tools to deal with at the time. So yeah, it's really important to kind of to separate yourself from the addiction. They're very different things. It's an addictive substance. And
Yeah.
yeah, and talking about it really helped people get free.
Yeah. And free is a place that is adventurous. I mean, when you're free of anything holding you back, the limits that you take all limits that you've put on yourself and take and get rid of them. I mean,
Yes.
I would think professionally, romantically, personally, like every area of spiritually is elevated by just cutting it out, even for 3 weeks. I mean, to be able to go through and have the freedom and be able to talk about it. I think the shame is a big part of a lot of it, a lot of things with women that we deal with. And I think that our knee jerk reaction to perfectionism and this idea that we have to be perfect at 100% at every single thing we do is, another, it's such a huge piece in this puzzle of like, well, I mean, forget it. I can't do it all. So I need to like, I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. I have clients. I mean, that's like the number one thing I think I hear clients say. I
Yeah,
don't know.
right.
I'm so overwhelmed. I can't even write out a grocery list. I have so much going on.
Wow.
Well, what? What's going on? Well, I don't know. I've got so much going on. And it's like they're so paralyzed from the need of being perfect and all the things they overcommit to and stretch themselves thin and all of these things that it's like, oh my God, you really can't see. And 98% of my clients, I would say, wine is their go-to. It's the go-to solution to alleviate the stress, alleviate a headache, alleviate, when they start feeling
Wow.
in their bodies, like
Yeah.
when it builds up and it's like on your shoulders, like, I'm going to get a glass of wine. I gotta just take a load off
Yes.
today,
Yeah. And I talk to women a lot about that as well, because a lot of women that I talk to they think it helps with anxiety and stress, like you say, but it actually makes it worse. So it can make you feel that initial kind of snap from the dopamine will make you feel good as your blood sugar, blood sugar goes up. But as it drains away, it will often leave you feeling worse than when you
Oh yeah.
started. And then it does things like dehydrates you. So the next day you're shaky. It messes with your brain, so it can actually make you feel more anxious and more nervous. Then you've got the kind of the shame and the self-loathing on top of it that you drank again. There's very little about alcohol that actually helps you in any way, even though it feels like it does. For a nanosecond, it's actually making it you generally feel worse. And so, people talk about anxiety, like you get hangovers and
Oh God,
anxiety, and
yeah.
you feel worse than you did the night before, which is such a shame. So I can so relate to women struggling with being everything and doing everything and trying to get on top of everything. And I think for anyone listening who is feeling that way and that they are feeling massively overwhelmed, it's almost too hard to know when to start. And I hear that a lot. Like, one is people get very fearful, and two is it's just too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And fears, we have to address separately. And I think as you deal with your drinking, then the fear kind of goes away because you realize you're not missing anything. But feeling overwhelmed, if you just boil it down to why, we talk a lot about your why, and it sounds very simplistic, but there's more you can do about your why as well. So if you think about why it is you want to stop, for yourself, and maybe you don't want to see your kids to see you drinking or to see you impaired, or you want to feel better the next day. I personally it was all those things, and I was worried about driving the next day. I drove my kids to school and to work, and I was always a little bit, have I drunk so much the night before that I might still be, close to the edge of being, I don't think I ever was, but I was worried about that. So think about, whys and why you want to stop. And then that will often address how you do it. So when you worked out why you want to stop, that'll help you work out how you actually do it and how you change those habits, because you'll have a better idea about how you're going to move forward and how you're going to replace those habits that you have at 9 o'clock. And think about what it is that gets you excited about having control again over wine. Because for me, I hated something else controlling me. That was a real bugbear for me. So I think, you know, getting excited about that feels great. And if you think about how you're going to feel when you're not drinking, when you're not waking up at 3 o'clock and feeling awful, thinking about what will change, thinking about the fact you don't need to do, you know, little quick trips to the bottle-o, as they're called here in Australia, to the off license or the bottle shop. And I used to kind of vary between that bottle shop and this bottle shop, so they didn't kind of get to know me too well and didn't suspect things. So you don't have to do that. I don't know if anyone else can relate. Not having to, those kind of problems don't exist anymore. You don't have to find that money. You don't have to hide the empties. You don't have to stress about, you know, people smelling on your breath the next day. You don't have to worry about your head pounding. Really digging deep into not just why, but how things are going to change for you when you get a handle on your drinking, whether that's just stopping for a short while and then moderating, or stopping completely, or but just if you think about it in a short-term thing, it's less scary. Being sober curious. Yeah, really getting a handle on that.
So what would you say to, and this is just me not trying to put you on the spot, but
Sure.
what would you say to somebody who is thinking like, you know what, I really like what this Annabel Stewart has to say. I think that maybe I'm curious about trying. So, she's in Australia, I'm in California. I can't really, even if I email her, I'm not going to get a response, right? So maybe I'm going to try to not drink tonight. What would you tell them is a easier way or a step that they could take to not drinking just for one night, just to try it on?
Yeah, love that. And the first thing I'd like to say is that we're international, that we have clients in America and Australia and the UK. So we're quite used to working with, you know, people internationally. And because our course is online, it's beautiful. You can you know, you can get the course and you can start straight away, which is awesome. And the lives that we do as well, take into account the different time zones. So it's all very doable. But if you just wanted to get started tonight, you can, if you just get in touch with me. We've got this free wine o'clock reset guide, which will give you some tips. But the biggest one to give verbally now, and I think this is one that I think is incredibly powerful, and as far as I know, you know, it's something that I've developed and no one else does. And we call it our daily freedom plan. So the night before, or if you wake up in the morning, I need you to get your journal, get a bit of paper, and write down what you're going to do that day. Instead of drinking, when you get to 5 o'clock, what your plan is. So you need to know what your activities are going to be and what you're going to drink instead, and date it, and preferably do it the day before. And then when you wake up the next day, your job is to follow that plan. Okay. So you need to work out at 5 o'clock, if that's your usual time when you're drinking, you need to think about what you're going to do instead. So are you going to go for a walk? Are you going to sit down for 5 minutes with a ginger beer and a bowl of chips and phone your mum? What are you going to do instead of drinking, and what are you going to drink instead of alcohol? And then put aside, you know, hide the alcohol or make it very difficult to look at. Make it as easy as you can to do exactly what it is you've planned. And to take that one step further back as well, if you think about, a lot of us know quite a bit about habit loops now and the different stages of habits, but there's one little bit you really need to know here, and that's the cue, behavior, reward. And we obviously have the cue, which is usually it's 5 o'clock and we want to have a drink. Right. And then we have the behavior, which is going for a drink, and the reward, which is I feel relaxed, or I feel rewarded, or for me it was I feel like I've stopped adulting for the day, and this is my transition to you know, me time for the evening. And if you understand those three, then you can change the bridge in between. So you want to think about how you want to feel. So if you want to feel like you've stopped adulting, you need to think what else can make you feel that way. Do you need to get in touch with a friend? Do you need to have a bath, go for a swim, put the kids in front of the TV and do something completely different for you? What it is, what will make you feel that way, and then you need to work out how to get from your cue to feeling that way, and what's going to do that instead of an alcoholic drink. So you need a new bridge for that little bit in between. And when you've got that, you can work out what your daily freedom plan is going to be, what you're going to do for the next 24 hours. And if you do that each day before you get to the tricky time, all you have to do is show up and follow that plan. So quite often people do nothing and think, I'm just going to do better when I get to 5 o'clock. And they get to 5 o'clock and they've had a horrible day, and they've just run out of willpower and self-control, and they're just frazzled. They have no energy left. And we all know what that's like. right?
Yeah.
When we've just run out of steam. And so it's just too easy to grab a drink or make poor food choices. So you need to plan it that morning or the night before, and then you just have to follow the plan. It's really, really easy, and it really helps. So you need to have a big old brainstorm about how you want to feel, what is that drink giving to you, and how else can you get to that feeling, and then work out how you're going to do that. And then get yourself some beautiful alcohol-free drinks. There's some gorgeous alcohol-free drinks now that feel really treaty and grown up. And it's important that we do that as well. Don't just have a glass of water, because that just feels rubbish. You know, make elderflower cordial, or there's so many beautiful drinks that you can get now that aren't too sweet and sugary, that make you feel fabulous. So have that instead. And a lot of the time we're looking to rehydrate and for a sugar hit. So at 5 o'clock, we're tired and we're slumpy and we need a bit of energy to get through making dinner and, you know, that next kind of stage. So do something that will address those feelings. But there's more information in the 1 o'clock reset guide. But that's my top tip is, daily freedom plan. Write it down in advance. Don't wait till you get there and hope you'll be okay, because it rarely works doing that seat of the pants thing.
I love that daily freedom plan. I think that's so cool. And I love it because as you're talking in my head, I'm thinking I'm working on my New Year's with my budget and sticking to my budget. And, you know, by myself, I wanted to do this, not my husband making me or anything, but the daily freedom plan. I'm like, oh, it's like when I put my budget for the week, I have to stick to it. Like,
yes, that's exactly.
Like stick to it and not get like sidetracked, you know?
Yeah, when it's written down, there's something magic happens when we write things down. And there's that lovely phrase where intention goes, energy flows, I think it is.
Yeah.
So when you have to intend to do it and write it down, something happens when we do that. We kind of commit to ourselves, and it's easier then to show up for ourselves and actually do it than just having a sort of woolly plan in your head. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us, you know, just touching on being sober curious, gray area drinking. Like, it's such important work. You are doing such important work. Seriously. I think that there are so many women in the world who need your services. So if they are looking for the guidance and the help, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you. So my website is annabelstewart.com.au, and I'm on Facebook and Insta as Alcohol Reset Coach. And I love hearing from people, even if they're just curious or want to, you know, they think that their case is a bit different, or they might need some different kind of help, whatever. I just love connecting and chatting. So please reach out. I love helping other women.
I love that. And I will put the links in the comments too. And you've got a bunch of free resources on your website. And you also have the instant sign up for the course for the online
21 day.
The 21 day. So everybody, if you go there, you can get right into that, or you can download the variety of free resources that she has. But thank you so much for coming on today. I hope to have you back again in the future. And to anyone listening, wherever you are in the world, I hope that you are walking today a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. Did you love this episode? Then head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Also check out innovativecoachbrooke.com to join in on the conversation, access show notes, and discover all the awesome free content. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thanks for tuning in.